Welcome back to the show. It's me, Phil Vischer. It's the Phil Vischer Podcast. I'm here with Sky Jitani.
What are you doing?
Is that weird?
Old suction cup eye.
What if I did that and just...
My sister,
Yeah, that's
that
why
would be bad.
That's why they don't give suction cup toys to kids anymore, because they literally pull their eyeballs out.
No.
Yes.
Yes,
That's
I've heard
why
that.
the Larry Boy doll could not have suction cup ears. He had to have Velcro ears to pick things up.
Kids pull their eyeballs out with suction cups.
Kids are constantly pulling out their own eyeballs with suction cups and playing with them because they think they're super balls.
You know, because most
They don't
toys,
know
if
any
you're
better.
not careful, you'll put your eye out.
They'll kill you.
And Christian Taylor,
Hi, everybody.
who is surprisingly subdued,
I am.
stately, and lovely.
Look at your
Thank you.
circles and
Very
circle-
circular.
Your matching jewelry.
In navy
Yes, thank you.
and white. Love it. Hey, you had a session this morning.
I actually did. I did. If you hear Publix commercials, that would be me.
Really? Are you the new voice of Publix?
I am the new
With an
voice
X?
of Publix. Yes, with an X.
The grocery store in Florida.
It's mostly all the ones. Yes, as a matter of fact, it's all along the East Coast, and so I do all today at Publix. You know,
Really?
Clorox for $9.99. Whatever.
Really?
Yeah.
So how often will you be doing those?
Well, I did like 10 of those today, so those will play. And then when the deals are off, they call me back, and I go back and
Good work.
what
if
a
you
life
can
I
get it.
live.
You should get some work like that. So
I
you
should
would
get
have
some voice work.
So you would have steady income.
Yeah, they paid me like $2,000 to do 8 little tags.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
For
Can't
how
beat
long?
it.
How much time did that take you?
Oh my! It took me 10 minutes. Isn't that terrible? Like I walked out of there going, huh?
Hey, it's a podcast. What do you know? Hey, it's a podcast. And we got video. Hey, it's a podcast. So lend an ear. The Phil Vischer Podcast starts right here. We'll talk to Sky, who's
Phil.
trying to move. How's that going for you?
I'm homeless.
Yeah, okay. And Christian, too.
Hello, everybody.
Who's making buku bucks. Just
Yeah.
talking about grapes on sale. We got no guest, none here for you.
But we're enough.
We are more than enough. At least twice as much as enough. Hey, it's a podcast. So lend an ear. The Phil Vischer Podcast starts right here. The Phil Vischer Podcast starts right here.
Really had to get through that.
I did the last part in Dutch.
Oh.
Just to see if people were paying
I
attention.
wondered what that was. Do you get tired of singing that now? Are you tired after 3
Yeah.
years and some work?
Yeah.
Are you ready
I'm
to
gonna
phase
see
it
how
out?
Fast I can go through it.
Oh.
Fast. Just get through it faster. Get to the good stuff. Sky, how was Wisconsin?
It was very nice.
What were you doing in Wisconsin? I didn't even know this.
Usually every summer we go up with our neighbors. They have a little vacation place up there that we enjoy going to.
Up where? In what part?
It's
Like downtown Milwaukee?
No, it's near Edgerton, Wisconsin. It's on the Rock River.
Okay.
They have 3 girls about the same ages as our 3 kids, and they're nice. It was fun.
Did you go whitewater rafting?
No. Just swimming, fishing.
Did you rappel or spelunk?
Neither.
Zip line?
No. We played flashlight tag.
That sounds fun. Did you catch lightning bugs?
No.
Oh.
Did you grill,
We had go-kart races, not go-kart races. We had golf cart races.
Did you-
Oh, that's fun.
grill hot dogs and make s'mores?
No s'mores. We did grill.
Okay, no s'mores,
It
no
wasn't
lightning
camping.
bugs.
It wasn't camping.
Well, what was it?
It was just going up to their little vacation place.
Does their vacation place have an out of doors?
Yeah, and we were outside, but we didn't do tent camping.
No, you don't have to have a tent to build a campfire.
Well, there was a fire. We had a fire.
And you
But
can
no
do s'mores in a
s'mores?
we
microwave.
didn't. No, we.
oh,
we
that's not. That's ridiculous.
No, it was
That'll
fun.
taste
It was
the
a good little
same.
getaway, and since we are homeless, it was nice to have a place.
Are you really not in a house?
We are really not in a house,
Because you've sold yours, but not yet moved into the new
right?
one.
And I
'Cause they
believe
have
me, do
closed on
not want to get into the details of that on this
We're not gonna
podcast.
Okay.
get into
So
that.
we're with my in-laws right now. We are hoping that tomorrow we move into the new house.
Okay. That's
So-
an exciting day.
Until then, all of our property is at a third house somewhere on the north side of Wheaton, which is not the house we are buying.
Boy, that's complicated.
It is complicated.
Our realtor, and that one's for sale, right? That's a
I
house
think
for
that
sale.
house is sold, but they're not moving in until next month. So
Do
our
they know that someone else has moved into the house they bought?
No, but all of our boxes are there.
Wow.
Okay.
Such an interesting scenario. You're not going to ask me how Virginia Beach was?
How about you? I didn't know that you even went there.
What? Yes, you did.
Well, you mentioned it in the other room,
Yes.
but I didn't really register on it.
It was beautiful. You should go
Was
there
it
sometime.
vacation or family time?
My little sister had a little baby. And
Oh,
so
your
I
little
went to
sister
see
has
this
little baby.
little
You
tiny.
gotta see the baby.
Yeah, you know,
Okay.
it's so amazing what God can do with just a couple
Right.
little cells.
Right.
And they come out in this tiny little thing that's perfect.
Should we sing the Every Sperm is Sacred song?
I was just gonna break into that.
and they come out perfect most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time.
Yeah.
And so she was very sweet, and I enjoyed that very much.
Okay.
And ended up loving Virginia Beach. We went to Fort.
You've never been there before?
Well, I've been there before, but never like on the beach in Virginia Beach.
Okay.
So we were at
I've never been on the beach
Fort
in Virginia
Story.
Beach.
It was beautiful.
I've only been to Regent University to speak.
Ah.
That's all.
Yeah. Well, I didn't go there, but the beach was beautiful.
In CBN land. Yeah.
Alrighty, where have you been?
Okay,
Phil?
yeah, you're going somewhere.
I didn't know. Oh, I'm going to Okoboji. It's Okoboji time of year. So next week we may be broadcasting from Okoboji if we can get my brother on as a guest or do something, and if I remember to bring some kind of recording device, which is always a challenge. Other than that, Saturday night, I finished shooting the puppets for Galaxy Buck.
That's
Finally.
a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, and
Like-
I asked Jim earlier, what was the wrap party?
Oh, yeah. Did you have a wrap party?
I think I went to McDonald's and I got 2 chocolate chip cookies.
That sounds like a party to
It
me.
was like 11:30 at night.
I love those warm chocolate chip
Oh, yeah,
cookies.
McDonald's.
Yeah, McDonald's is hurting.
Right.
Are they?
Yeah.
Oh, they're,
Really?
They're fine. They're just their stock is hurting because their same store sales
Sales are
aren't
down.
going up.
People aren't getting their Big Macs anymore.
Oh, they are. There's a line in the drive-through. Go there right now. There's a line in the drive-through.
Well, and what about all their changes they've made to be more health conscious? That
Well, I
hasn't
just
worked.
think their reputation, the brand is still French fries and Coca-Cola
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah, but that's neither here nor there.
I'm just saying.
Really,
Another
is it?
American icon that is slowly declining
No,
into
it's not.
oblivion.
No, you don't. You take that back, Sky Jitani. McDonald's is doing just fine.
All right.
What are we talking about today?
Okay, big news.
Big
There is
news?
big news. Tell me it's good news.
Do dogs go to heaven?
Some do.
That's the good news.
That's a question.
I do
It
think.
had a question mark on the end, so it does not qualify.
So
as
are
news
you
yet.
saying that they do go to heaven?
Only the ones who've accepted Jesus into their heart.
I'm asking you if you think.
Do I think dogs go to heaven?
Go to heaven.
Well, to be truthful, I don't know because I'm not God. So I don't know the answer to that. But I
But
will.
are you God spelled backwards?
Close. My husband sometimes thinks I am.
Really?
Probably. Yeah, or that I should live in the doghouse. But anyway, so I
We'll
do
get
not.
into that on next week's show. That's a different.
I don't know, but I do know that God seems to love life, and He seems to love animals, and He gives us
Little
animals
projection going on here.
Did you see him at the dog park? How do you know this?
because He wouldn't create them if He didn't love them.
Okay.
And He loves us, and He knows we love animals.
Guy's giving you the stink eye.
There's some interesting logic going on here.
Well, and I don't
So does
think
he
that.
love mosquitoes?
I think He does. He
They're
created
so
them.
Cute when you see them up
They
close.
have a purpose.
I think they're a product of the fall.
You mean they have a proboscis?
They have that too.
Yeah.
But I do think actually there will be animals in heaven.
The
But
question.
that's just my thought.
The question of whether animals will join us in the afterlife finally has a definitive response from
Did God
from
speak?
Rome.
Did God speak?
No.
Through the Pope, apparently.
Pope.
Oh.
It's a topic that's been long debated, with popes weighing in unofficially on both sides. 2 different popes have said 2 different things. Animals go to heaven. Animals, well, not that they go to heaven, they have eternal lives, or they don't have eternal lives. Notably, though, neither of these statements by prior popes were doctrinal statements, and Catholic theologians could continue to disagree and debate. But no more. No more disagreement or debate over whether animals go to heaven, because Pope Francis officially declared that animals will join us in heaven in his June 18th encyclical, which offers official and binding doctrine on the question. He says eternal life will be a shared experience of awe in which each creature, resplendently transfigured, will take its rightful place and have something to give those poor men and women who will have been liberated once and for all.
Okay, whoa.
So not only will animals be transcendent and resplendent in heaven, apparently they'll be waiting on us like the penguins in Mary Poppins.
Will they still taste good?
Stop it.
Can we eat? You can't eat a
Stop it.
resplendent.
We won't need to eat them.
Why not?
Can't eat a
Because we won't need to. It says there will not
resplendently
be hunger
animal.
in heaven.
Well, I don't think it says that.
What does it say? it
Well, there's a
says
tree of
There's
life,
no
and we
marriage.
eat from it.
there's no marriage
but-
and there's no crying.
And there's
Okay,
no sea.
if there's
and
no
there's
sex
sun,
and there's no food,
and there's no rock and roll.
then what else is there?
Stop it.
just
We
saying.
won't need those
Bingo
things.
for Catholics.
No, we won't need those things.
Okay, but wait a minute. Let me. If you
But
read,
is there any biblical basis that he's basing
wait,
this
well, that's
on?
what I'm trying to get to here.
Well, I just asked it.
Yeah, but if you read the statement carefully, there's a difference between saying an animal that dies now has an eternal soul that goes to be with God, and saying that creation itself will be set free from the curse and sharing the glory of
That's
God.
what I
which
mean.
is Romans 8.
That's what I mean.
Right.
The funny thing.
You know, you always are able to actually make a point
That's a gift. Thank you.
for something that I feel.
You're not supposed to interrupt me because
sorry.
it's my show.
I've got a little carried
I
away.
can interrupt.
I'm sorry.
She's excited about this
She is
topic.
excited about this. The funny thing is, and this happened because there was a rumor that he had said something like this last year, and it turns out it was wrong. It was quoting a prior pope. Pope Prior.
I like the way you say that.
Prior Pope.
Go ahead.
Richard Pryor as the Pope.
Oh,
Surely
my.
that happened in a movie in the 80s at some point. He never says heaven.
Right.
No, he never says, because he's not talking about heaven.
Right.
He's talking about eternity.
He's talking about the new heavens and new earth.
But we have it so ingrained in our culture that when you die, you leave the earth and you go to heaven, another place, somewhere else, that people read into that when they read what he says. And all the headlines are, oh, Pope Francis says dogs go to heaven. Partly
Notice-
because that was a movie.
Nobody ever worries about whether or not cats go to heaven.
No one wants cats, because cats wouldn't even go. They're like,
right.
no,
Nah, I don't wanna do
I'm good.
I
I'm gonna
remember
stay
Tony
here.
Campolo years ago talked about how there are dog churches and there are cat churches.
Really?
Yes? What does he mean
And he
by
said,
that?
he said, a dog church says, you love me, you care for me, you feed me, you must be God. A cat church says, you love me, you care for me, you feed me, I must be God.
Oh, so
That's
the
interesting.
cats are wrong. That's what
Yeah,
Tony Campolo is saying.
cats are basically
So
narcissistic animals.
He's a dog person.
Right, but it's an interesting diagnosis of our own faith. You know, how do we see our relation with God?
Right.
That because I'm so loved, He's God, or because I'm so
Right.
loved, I'm really God.
So
and I'm
Tony
excused.
Campolo has taken the parable of the sheep and the goats and turned it into the parable of the dogs and the cats.
Exactly, something like that.
That's astonishing. So, okay, now this article is from the New York Daily News, written by Bruce Frederick. He goes on, it's an editorial. He says, what does all this mean for the faithful? If Mary is grieving for the suffering of animals, which is one other part of the encyclical, and if we will all be joining other animals in heaven, it seems only sensible that we do all we can to decrease cruelty to animals, and especially our complicity in that cruelty. And the most cruelty that is meted out by humanity against God's other creatures is the result of eating meat, dairy, and eggs. Indeed, the average American Catholic eats dozens of farm animals every single year, thus directly contributing to their suffering and death. All of us can take a stand against this abuse by no longer eating animals or their products, and when we do, we'll be acting in clear alignment with Catholic doctrine.
Okay, that's a load of bull.
Now, Mr. Frederick, who wrote this piece for the New York Daily News,
Yeah.
is the Directory of Policy for Farm Sanctuary, a national farm animal protection
Okay,
organization.
there's two different things here.
He may have an agenda.
A little bit.
I think he's just jumped on Francis's coattails with his agenda.
Mm-hmm.
He hitched his little vegan bandwagon behind Francis's draft horse.
How long did it take you to work that out?
He just did.
It just happened. It just happened.
There's two different issues there. One is, I mean, the New Testament is very clear that there's nothing wrong with eating any animal.
Okay, where does it say that?
Can we eat people? Does it say?
No,
it doesn't say. It doesn't say that's wrong either.
Well, I think you have to murder them first. That's
Well, no,
wrong.
you
What
don't.
if
They
you
could
find
just
them
die.
by the road? The roadkill.
Well, that's not right. So,
Of course, he doesn't have anything
first
to
of
base
all-
that on.
First of all, obviously Jesus ate meat. He ate fish
How do you know?
because he prepared fish for breakfast for the disciples in John 21.
and they
Yeah,
gave him
but-
some fish after he
That's right.
was raised.
And he ate it.
He
But
was
fish
even
isn't meat.
transfigured and resplendent.
Fish is meat.
No, fish is fish. Meat is meat.
Fish is fish
Catholic?
meat.
That's like the Catholic restaurant belief.
No, but
So,
Like-
they,
okay,
they have a fish department
But
and they have
Jesus-
a meat department.
Jesus was also an observant Jew, which
Yeah.
meant at Passover.
No pigs, no piggies.
No, but he ate the Paschal lamb.
Will pigs go to heaven? Because then
What? And then you
Jews
get,
couldn't
then
go
you
to
get to the
heaven.
book of Acts, and Peter
Or
has that
Muslims.
vision with all the animals and the sheep,
Yes.
and the Lord
And
says,
get up,
kill
kill
and eat whatever you
Yeah.
want. You can have lobster now. You
Yeah.
can have whatever you want.
And Paul said you could even eat meat that was sacrificed to idols.
Yes.
Just don't eat it in the pagan
Right.
temple.
So there's nothing wrong. Secondly,
Okay.
the legitimate point that the guy does make is, factory farming of animals. There is a lot of animal cruelty that goes on in the way these
Yeah,
animals are
right.
often processed and kept in tiny cages. That's a legitimate issue of creation care and respect for these animals that God has made, and not abusing them and not just treating them like a product. But it doesn't mean you can't eat them.
So animals can still be our friends,
And our food.
and it is okay to eat your friends.
Could you eat animals in the Garden of Eden?
This is an area where we need John Walton, because
Yeah.
that's a debate of whether that was...
There is a line in Genesis 1 that says, "Here are the plants, I've given them to you as food." And so some people have argued that means the original intention was that we were vegetarians and eating animals, and hence animal death was a part of the fall.
Okay.
That's for people who don't believe there could be animal death before the fall.
Right.
So you end up at a vegetarian position as our original design. Other people disagree.
Yeah, so
with
that's a ambiguous bit of Genesis.
Ambiguous.
Well, and at the end of the
Genesis.
day, like I said,
That's my
we
new
don't
book.
know. We
And
don't.
what-
We don't know.
We
what
don't know.
ambiguous
One other
Genesis
point,
is.
Yes.
which I just thought of because you brought up the Old Testament.
Oh,
when
good
the
job.
Israelites
Thanks.
leave Egypt, the Lord provides food for them every day.
Yeah. Yeah, he drops quail on them.
Right, they not only get the manna from heaven, but they get quail right out of the sky,
Yeah.
which is meat.
That's because they're
Is
birds.
that meat? Does that qualify as meat for you,
It's 'cause
Christian?
that's why
Yes.
they came out of the sky, because they're birds.
Yes,
Yeah.
Sky.
because
They're not
under
gonna walk.
meat you have turkey and you have quail and you have
Hey,
Cornish
there's
hens.
1,000 quail walking into the camp in a little parade. No, they're going to come out of the sky.
Yeah. What do you? I don't understand what's so funny.
Right, you said right out of the sky, like it was a miracle that quail can fly.
No, they just fell out of the sky. They just died in the air and they fell.
Oh,
Is
really?
that- is that the
exactly
truth?
what it says?
Something like that. And they were nicely tenderized when they hit the ground.
Were they also plucked?
That would be nice.
Ooh.
They were,
They were
what?
plucked in the upper atmosphere.
The actual Hebrew doesn't say quail.
It says
It says Chick-fil-A sandwich.
no.
Oh, that's nice.
Okay, what were we talking about? Oh, dogs going to heaven.
Yeah,
and so the point is, what you're saying is, let me just summarize.
Okay.
Okay.
Please.
So what you're saying the Pope said was that not that all dogs have a soul and they're going to heaven. What the Pope is saying is that in eternity, when God has established his kingdom, wherever it is,
It's right here, baby.
yeah.
The renewed heaven.
Right,
and
the
earth.
renewed heaven and earth. Then there
It is
will be
all of
animals
creation.
present, all of
All of
creation.
creation is present.
That's actually what I was trying to say in the beginning.
Including little redeemed mosquitoes that will pound their own needle noses into the shapes of crosses and do no harm.
no,
will
they just
beat their
they won't need
noses
to
into
suck blood anymore because they won't need to eat.
Plowshares.
Yeah.
They won't need to. Well, they'll just drink from the tree of life.
Will we finally get unicorns back?
I hope so.
Sure hope so.
We have narwhals.
and Hufflepuffs and what?
Is this our only story
centaurs.
today?
Okay. Satanic Temple holds public sculpture unveiling in Detroit. Finally, at long last.
A reason to go back to Detroit. See the satanic statue.
You know our friend. Who's our friend?
Lucian Graves.
Lucian
Greaves.
Greaves, sorry.
Greaves. Lucian Greaves. Not his real name. Lucian Greaves, but
What is his real name?
John Smarterberg. I don't know
Okay.
what his name is.
Does it look like? What does it look like?
A satanic organization unveiled a controversial bronze Baphomet sculpture in
Baphomet.
Detroit just before midnight on Saturday. Do you know what a Baphomet is?
seen the picture.
Not a clue.
A Baphomet.
have a picture?
It's from the medieval Latin Baphomet, Baphometi, Occitan, Baphomets, with a Z, which is the cool one for the kids. A term originally used to describe an idol or other deity that the Knights Templar were accused of worshiping, and that subsequently was incorporated into disparate occult and mystical traditions. It appeared as a term for a pagan idol in trial transcripts transcripts of the Inquisition of the Knights Templar in the early 14th century. The name first came into popular English usage in the 19th century with debate and speculation on the reasons for the suppression of the Templars.
I don't even understand what all that meant.
The Knights Templar. They were suppressed by the Catholic Church.
Okay.
And one of the accusations made against them was that they were idolatrous and that they worshipped an idol named Baphomet.
All right. Do we know if that's true or not?
No, we don't.
Okay.
Since 1856, the name Baphomet has been associated with a sabbatic goat image drawn by Eliphas Levi, which contains binary elements representing the sum total of the universe, e.g., male and female, good and evil, etc.
So basically,
It's a goat-headed man.
Yeah, it's a naked dude with a goat head.
Well, that's a
Yeah.
fawn.
no, that's a dude with a goat body.
Yeah, you got your goat on the wrong end.
Yeah. A fawn has a goat lower half, but a male up, like a man upright, like a centaur has a horse body. And
Yeah.
a bath mat or whatever this thing is has got a goat head.
Goat head and a man
man's body.
So they had tried...
Like a minotaur has a bull head and a man's body.
Yes.
Aha.
Yes, they had tried, the Satanic Temple had tried to install their Baphomet,
Bath mat.
holy Baphomet, Batman, near the Ten Commandments monument in Oklahoma, the one on the courthouse that was very controversial. They said, all right, well, if you can have your Ten Commandments, then we can have our Baphomet. And they were not allowed to do that. So, under cover of darkness, they secreted their Baphomet, which weighs 2,000 pounds. It's a 1-ton Baphomet. That's a lot of Baphomet.
That is.
To Detroit, where they were going to display it at a business.
Who's going to notice in Detroit?
Really? I was about to say
I don't want
the
to
same-
hear any disparaging comments about Detroit.
Hey, I read an article not that long ago in Detroit that people are going to the cemeteries in Detroit and having their loved ones who've died exhumed, and even the dead are leaving Detroit.
I don't want to hear. What did I just say? What
He ignored you.
did I
It's a
just
great
say?
American city that needs a rebirth.
Can I
it's-
just
they're
cut in
having a
here
hard
and say,
time.
let me just ask you
Yes.
this one question. Why did they pick a goat-headed man to be the
The funny
satanic
thing-
representation?
Yeah, because it's been a symbol of the occult since the 1800s.
Well, I always thought it was a red guy with a pitchfork.
And well,
That's a popular image of Satan,
yes.
but that's not a symbol of the occult.
and the
Who is
statue.
the occult? I thought that was a bunch of different
name is
cults.
Fred.
No, I thought the occult was
Occult is worship of Satan and related kind of black magic kind of stuff.
Right.
Cults are false Christian traditions. Typically, they're like distortions of Christianity.
Okay.
is typically
I'm glad you cleared
what-
that up for me.
Yeah.
And the statue, though, it also has a little boy and a little girl.
There's the little white human children, a boy and a girl, looking up admiringly at the large
This sounds very C.S. Lewis-y.
goat-headed man.
Sort of.
Due to planned demonstrations, the group, which is opposed to Bible-themed displays on government land, kept the location of the unveiling of its 9-foot-tall monument secret until the last moment, when it emailed the information to ticket holders. So it was like a rave.
Ticket holders.
Yeah, fans.
What do they sell it online? Tickets to the
Yeah.
unveiling?
To go see the bath mat.
Yeah, you can come see our bath mat. We're unveiling it at midnight. Arrgh. The Satanic Temple unveiled the 1-ton statue at an industrial building near the Detroit River just before 11:30 p.m. local time as supporters chanted, "Hail Satan."
Wait a minute. Their whole point. And the whole.
You're not buying this?
You can't write this
But
stuff.
the whole group, their whole point, they're not
Yeah.
even really a satanic worship cult.
No.
Their whole point is just they want to protest the display of religious symbols in public property.
Yeah.
So, is it on public property?
No, it was just at an industrial
So they
building.
really
and
didn't achieve
it's not even
anything.
going to stay there. Jex Blackmore, Jex, Jex Blackmore.
That sounds like a Star Wars character.
I think he's a friend of Lucian Greaves. I think they both got their names from an app. Director of the Satanic Temple Detroit chapter said temple members plan to transport the sculpture to Arkansas, where earlier this year the governor signed a bill authorizing a Ten Commandments monument on the state capitol's grounds. So basically, the bath mat is homeless. It's a homeless bath mat. It's desperately wanting to be on public property somewhere.
There will be some space at my in-laws' house soon.
They should just drop it in front of a courthouse somewhere because it weighs 2,000 pounds.
Yeah, what are they
It'll
gonna
be
do?
there at least a week. and they can have their little protest.
Well, I don't understand why
Jex
anybody really
Blackmore.
cares.
I want to know the names of all of the local chapter directors, if they're as cool as Lucian Greaves and Jex Blackmore.
I want to know why can't they put their little monument on public property?
People aren't really fond of Satan sculptures.
Right, but people also aren't fond of the Ten Commandments somewhere.
Many more are fond of the Ten Commandments
That is
than
true.
are fond of
But
Satan
if
sculptures.
we are going to allow the Ten Commandments on public property,
Well,
we should allow.
Ultimately, the Ten Commandments
Christian.
are going to have to. Are you sure you're from Mississippi?
Yeah, and I think she might be secretly one of their temple chapter
No.
heads.
Oh,
I
what's
think
your other
You,
name?
do you know what my agenda is here?
What?
Look, I don't want people telling me I can't put my Christmas tree on, or my creche scene on the courthouse square or the town
Well, you
square.
can't. You'd have to have permission.
But what I'm saying is,
And it's not your land.
I know. Okay, you're
land is
you're
your
disrupting
land.
me.
Sorry.
And my
This
point
land is ours.
is, if we tell everybody else, no, you can't have your things here, eventually it's going to come around to bite us.
It will. There will be no public displays.
Well, wasn't there
of
a
religious symbols.
situation in Florida we talked about on this podcast?
Yes.
Where they had
They made a free speech zone.
right, and there was a Christian thing, and
then the American Atheists
right,
built
and
a
even here in
monument there.
Chicago at the Daily Center,
Yep.
there's that big red A.
Yep,
the
from
atheists put
American
up
Atheists.
next to the menorah and the Christmas tree and all that. So we already have it happening.
Right, I think as Christians, we ought to say, come put all,
just as you
whatever
are.
Come
makes
put
you
your
feel
bath
comfortable.
mats all
Come
over
put
our
it
public
right.
squares.
Come put it right next to my crush scene.
How close can the bath mat be to baby Jesus?
I think it should be. I
Because you
think it
don't
should
want to
be.
throw out the baby Jesus with the bath mat. About 50 people prayed for the city and denounced the monument. The last thing we need in Detroit is having a welcome home party for evil, said Reverend Dave Bullock, pastor of Greater St. Matthew Baptist Church. So I went to the Satanic Temple website, which, first of all, I have to say is poorly designed. I don't think this is a large budget operation.
Well, they clearly had enough to
Kind of like this
create a
podcast.
2,000-pound
they raised
bath
just
mat.
enough for a 2,000-pound bath mat. But they have an FAQ page which answers some basic questions because you got to wonder. So
Can't wait to hear
here's
this.
basic question: do you, Satanic Temple, worship Satan? Because one would think if one called oneself the Satanic Temple, that one would worship Satan.
Or maybe that's where Satan worships.
That's the church he goes to.
Could be.
Or
It is-
maybe it's a temple in the town of Satan.
Could be that too. Could be that too. See, we got 3 options.
Would there be a Chicago temple?
Come on, read on.
If the town was called Satan, would it be satanic?
Well, maybe the town is satanic.
It is the position of the Satanic Temple that religion can and should be divorced from superstition. As such, we do not promote a belief in a personal Satan. To embrace the name Satan is to embrace rational inquiry.
I just have Dana
Now
Carvey
that
going
is
through
a
my-
bunch of hogwash.
Satan?
Satan? Who could
That
have
is-
given them that idea?
Church lady.
I loved the church lady.
The Satanists, to embrace the name Satan is to embrace rational inquiry removed from supernaturalism and archaic tradition-based superstitions. The Satanists should actively work to hone critical thinking and exercise reasonable agnosticism in all things. So if you're a Satanist, it means you promote critical thinking. That's what a
I
Satanist
think
is.
they've branded themselves poorly.
That's like new age. That's like new age Satanism.
So then,
They're really
next
humanists
question,
is what they're saying.
Right.
And that's one of the questions is how are you different from humanists?
Yeah.
And they try to elucidate it in ways that have nothing to do with Satan. What does Satan mean to the Satanic Temple? Satan is symbolic of the eternal rebel in opposition to arbitrary authority, forever defending personal sovereignty, even in the face of insurmountable odds. That's what Satan is.
Now that is what Satan is.
Personal sovereignty.
Well, they made him into a hero.
Me first.
He's
Yeah,
like
it's
James
like-
Dean all of a sudden.
It's like wanting to be God.
Satan is an icon for the unbowed will of the unsilenced inquirer.
That is true. I believe that.
The heretic who questions sacred laws and rejects all tyrannical impositions.
I disagree.
Why do you
So
disagree?
the founding fathers were Satanists.
Well, under that rule, Martin Luther's a Satanist because
Yeah,
he
anyone who-
defied authority. And
Yeah, William
was
Wilberforce is a
inquisitive.
Satanist.
Right.
Okay, so
Yeah,
they're
if you're-
defining
if you-
it kind of broadly.
If your kids pray in school, they're Satanists.
Right.
And if you were in a communist country and you were a Christian, you'd be a Satanist.
Wow.
Ha.
And a Christian at the same
Yeah,
time. Which
so
would the communists arrest you for?
Here's what they are. They're just looking for attention, and they know that by calling themselves a satanic temple, they get on the websites and news
And then
feeds.
they get into, and this is where it gets kind of interesting. If you don't actually believe in Satan, how can you call yourself a religion? And they defend that by saying, well, we reject the idea that religions have to be a supernaturalist. And then so they say, okay, what's the difference between you and a humanist society? And they say, well, some of our goals are different. We are very anti-authoritarian.
Whatever.
So anyway, those are the guys that are trying to put bath mats.
Which is probably why they're
in
not very successful in
Detroit
their.
industrial buildings, but they have great names. Lucian Greaves.
They do.
So why do you need to have evil-sounding names to promote inquiry?
Well, because it's cool. Kind of like think of Severus Snape and Malfoy and Voldemort. I mean, come on.
Darth Vader.
Really?
You got to have a good villain name.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they say we're not promoting evil. We just want to sound like we are.
Yeah.
So I bet they drive black cars and wear black
wear a lot of black.
clothes.
Yeah.
And
They all look like
eyeliner.
Agent Smith from
So,
The Matrix.
so what is your point here?
That's some interesting news this week,
That
don't you
is,
think?
I do agree. That's interesting news.
I have one more story.
Is it? Hold on.
Do you think there's a bath mat coming to our town?
Definitely not. Not happening. But I would help them if they wanted to come.
Would you
I would help
rather
them.
allow a bath mat in your hometown or disallow a nativity?
Allow a bath mat.
Really?
Yeah.
Even a big, scary, 9-foot-tall, goat-headed, horned thing with two little children?
Yes. Do you want to know
staring
why?
at it?
Do you want to know why?
I guess so.
Okay, well, two reasons. One, I do think as Christians, we ought to be loving to even people that we disagree with while disagreeing with them. And having that statue there is an opportunity for me to take my kids and show them and explain what my problem is with this.
But yeah, I guess my thing is it's kind of, and I think this is partly what they're doing, they're really only doing it to antagonize. It's not part of any religious tradition.
That I agree.
It's not
I'm talking about in
legitimate
theory.
religious tradition, as opposed to saying, no, Jews, we don't want the menorah here because we're Christians. Now that's clearly, that's
bigoted.
That's a foul. That's a foul. But for someone to just say, I mean, it's like the church in Indiana that wants to be the church of pot. Says, hey, it's part of our religion, so now you have to let us smoke pot because we're starting a new religion. Or the Jedis, hey, we need to be able to marry people because we're Jedis.
That's legitimate, though.
It now is, not in the U.S.
In the UK, it is.
In the UK, it
Jedi
is.
people can marry
It's an
people.
official religion in the UK.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they've been given permission that their leaders can act as officiants in marriage ceremonies.
Wow.
For little Jedis that want to have Jedi families.
Padawans.
But they need like Disney officiants, because people are giving up on religion, but they can't give up on beliefs because then they're hollow and empty shells and they're miserable and they drink themselves to death. So they believe in Mickey Mouse. So then they want to have a wedding at Disney World. And then wouldn't you want Mickey Mouse to officiate your wedding? So they should apply and say, okay, Mickey is now a religion. He's a religious figure, and we can have an animatronic Mickey officiate your wedding.
I think this is actually
I think you could sell Walt on that.
one of the more sticky legal issues, which would be fun to talk to your brother about next week at Okoboji. If he's
write it
into
down, please.
Is just the ambiguity in the courts about what is the definition of a religion.
Yeah, we don't know.
It used to, back when the Constitution was written, everyone knew what a religion was.
I'm going to write that down so we don't forget. Okay?
Write it down.
I'm going to write it down right here, and then we'll ask my brother that next week. What is the definition? Bear with me, America, of religion.
Hey, we have other people listening, not just in America,
Oh,
right?
that's right. Bear with me, world. Okay, I have one more story.
Let's
Okay.
hear it.
Every now and then you hear something that's kind of cerebral, but then suddenly something happens in the news that makes it real, that brings it to life.
Okay, what you're saying is that you hear something that's sort of theoretical.
Yes.
And then Why are you
You're
laughing?
explaining this, and he's rubbing his eyes.
I'm rubbing my
Hey, look,
eyes.
I'm with you. I'm with you,
I
buddy.
don't know what the
I'm just
story's
trying to
gonna be, but-
understand what you're saying. So
Okay.
then it becomes reality.
Yes. So
Okay.
so I think my mother-in-law forwarded an email that was from, I think, Breakpoint, Chuck Colson's thing, except it's not him because he died. But it's our friend
John Stone Street
Yes, John
and Eric Metaxas.
Thank you. You're good at names.
I try.
And it was quoting from Alexander Solzhenitsyn's commencement speech from Harvard. You know who Alexander
I do.
Solzhenitsyn is? Okay, good. Those of you at home who weren't alive in the 80s and weren't paying attention and don't read anything about history, he was a Russian dissident who was exiled from the Soviet Union for like 20 years, 15 years,
Yep.
a long time. He was also held in gulags in Siberia, and they didn't like him. The Russians didn't like him because
Just like Yakov Smirnov.
He wrote a lot of.
who was exiled to Branson.
He was
ironically.
exiled. I went to his show.
Did you?
Yes, I did.
Yes, well, that's
hilarious.
not what we're talking about now.
He
Alexander
really lost out after the Cold War, didn't he?
yeah,
really
it just
did.
wasn't. It just wasn't as fun.
But go
I
to
think he's
Branson.
just
You'll think it's
retiring.
fun.
I think he's just retiring.
They give you little like box dinners that you sit with and you eat during his show.
because it's so long or because it's so
But
dull.
but guess what?
What?
He's not even there. It's on a video screen.
Oh, I think that was just when you were
that
there.
horrible?
I'm thinking that was just when you were there.
I don't think so.
Can I get back to my
Yeah,
story?
please go right ahead.
Okay, so they were quoting from Alexander Solzhenitsyn. He gave the commencement speech after he was allowed to live in the West. He came to the U.S. and in 1979, because he was kind of a hero, he was this voice against the Soviet Empire, and this was right before Ronald Reagan, tear down that wall.
Mr. President.
Yes, all that. He gave the commencement speech at Harvard,
Mr. Gorbachev.
and he ended up criticizing things about the West to the point that he was actually booed in his commencement speech at Harvard. But
So he's an equal opportunity offender, like
yes,
any good comedian.
he is. But one of the things, I thought this was interesting because he had 4 or 5 concerns about the future of the West. And the first one was the loss of courage as a virtue, that the leaders of Western countries had lost courage. Another one was, though, he felt the dominance of legalistic life in the West. And here's what he said about that. Western society has chosen for itself the organization best suited to its purposes, and one I might call legalistic. The limits of human rights and rightness are determined by a system of laws. Every conflict is solved according to the letter of the law, and this is considered to be the ultimate solution. But his critique is a society based on the letter of the law and never reaching any higher fails to take advantage of the full range of human possibilities. The letter of the law is too cold and formal to have a beneficial influence on society. Whenever the tissue of life is woven of legalistic relationships, this creates an atmosphere of spiritual mediocrity that paralyzes man's noblest impulses, and it will be simply impossible to bear up to the trials of this threatening century with nothing but the supports of a legalistic structure.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Okay. So his point was that because there's a decline of character, it's all replaced with just laws.
So
do this, can't do this, and that you can't tell anyone what they're doing is wrong if it's legal.
Right.
Right.
There's a theory of moral development, and I forget who came up with this. I studied it years ago in seminary, but it's stuck in my head. And there's 3 phases of moral development. You can see this in children especially. So the first phase of moral development is, especially a child, although this is true of many adults as well, is you do things not because they're right or wrong, but because of the fear of a consequence, right? So, for example, you don't speed in your car because you're worried that you're going to get busted by the cops and tasered and then hung in a jail cell. Or you don't speed because you don't want to get the ticket, so you don't speed. That's it. That's the first level of moral development. And most children grow out of that relatively early because I don't want to get a spanking, I don't want to get a timeout, whatever. The second phase of moral development says you don't do certain things, or you do them because they're legally right or wrong. So that person doesn't speed because, well, the speed limit is 75. I'm not going to break the speed limit, period. This is what Jesus was always battling with the Pharisees, who were sticking to the letter of the law. But the third level of moral development is not an external law, but it's an internal character that says, no, I'm going to do what's right or wrong because my internal moral compass is what it is. So in that case, if you have somebody dying in your car and you know they have to get to the hospital, if you're stuck in the second level of moral development,
Right.
you still don't speed because you can't tell the difference between the greater good and the law that's in front of you. But if you're in the third level of moral development, yeah, you are going to speed because you want to save that life. But what we've become as a society is we have so many people stuck in the first level that they just do what feels good and they just deal with the consequences later, whether you're on Wall Street or Bill Clinton with an intern or whatever it is, where so many of us are stuck in the first level that as a society we've said, well, if you can make it to the second level, hooray, because we see that as success now, and law is going to be the end all be all of moral development. And with so few people in our culture anymore get to that third level that says,
Which is, go ahead.
which is the internal compass. Like, if you don't have people of character on Wall Street, you end up with the crisis that happened in 07, 08.
As Warren Buffett described it, Wall Street was creating financial instruments of mass destruction, but it was legal.
Right.
They weren't doing anything, quote unquote, wrong, because if it isn't illegal, it must not be wrong.
Right.
Planned Parenthood said about the scandal about selling baby body parts, it's perfectly legal. That was their defense. It doesn't. Forget about how it sounds. Forget about how terrible it sounds.
Don't look at what I'm doing over here.
We aren't doing anything illegal.
Right.
We are following the letter of the law. But here's the case that caught my eye and made me think of that. There's a new trend. It's something the cool kids are doing.
This is a fashion trend, Phil?
No, it's not a fashion trend. If you see a female reporter delivering a live newscast, on the air in your neighborhood, you run up to her and yell a sexual obscenity in her microphone, and then run away, and it gets carried live on TV. And they all yell the same thing. It's a phrase about the woman that is just hideous.
That's not a thing.
It is such a thing that news organizations have had to have a meeting to talk about it, about what they can do.
How did I miss this thing?
Well, it's not that big a thing.
Okay,
It's not like on the cover of Time magazine.
Yeah, I didn't see
But apparently Phil's aware of it.
It wasn't. There's not a guy that's going to chase you down in Italy to say, "Hey, you have to know what's going on back in North
I
America."
haven't gone.
What's happening in Canada and the U.S.
Really?
The problem is they've looked at it. They aren't doing anything wrong. It's their speech is covered by free speech. You can yell obscenities in public. It's an open mic. They're not assaulting the woman.
It's just very impolite.
It's just really mean.
Well, yeah.
But the news organizations have recognized that there is no law that covers this behavior, so they can't say it's wrong. They're powerless to say it's wrong unless there's a law that says it's wrong.
Because we can't appeal to common decency anymore.
We can't be good. We can only be legal. Is the problem. And so we're focused on making better laws because we have no idea how to make better people.
That's the truth.
Dallas Willard talked a lot about this.
He did?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
he read
He did.
Solzhenitsyn.
You're right.
He did.
See, and as to me, that's what the Western world used to look to the Christian church for.
Right.
Is how do we make better people? Yeah, in fact, that's what Benjamin Franklin, as deistic as he was mad at his local Presbyterian pastor because he felt he was more concerned about making good Presbyterians than making good people.
Well, and a lot of our listeners will often get on our case when we talk about early American history and we kind of debunk some of the America's a Christian nation thing. And what they often look to is the founders, whether it's George Washington or Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Jefferson, who Jefferson was not a Christian, Franklin was not, Washington was kind of dubious, but they all appealed to the church and to Christianity because they saw its value in the culture. But what they wanted to do exactly what you said. They wanted it to be the moral fiber of the country and to create virtuous people because they knew that a free democratic society would only survive where there's virtuous people.
Right.
And our friend Os Guinness wrote that book, Free People's Suicide, which was all about this topic, that as people lose their virtue, your only recompense is to go to law to try to contain
And you can't
evil.
if you can't self-control, you
Right.
can't self-govern.
Bingo.
I'm going to put that on a T-shirt.
We should have a T-shirt that says that.
Man.
You could get on the front, it could say, I can't control myself. And on the back, it could say something else.
Solzhenitsyn said, if one is raised from a legal point of view, so basically these are kids raised in a culture that's all about the law, nothing more is required. Nobody may mention that one could still not be right. and urge self-restraint or a renunciation of these rights, call for sacrifice and selfless risk, this would simply sound absurd. Voluntary self-restraint is almost unheard of. Everybody strives toward further expansion to the extreme limit of the legal frames. So what can I get away with?
Right.
And if you think about just like the attitude of kids in college and how many of them cheat, if you can get away with it, and how many of them, hey, there's a girl, she's kind of drunk. Is that legal?
Don't ask Bill Cosby.
How? Well, she's not drunk. I just slipped her a roofie.
That's a story.
How drunk does she have to? Can she be? And it's still legal. Well, is it right? Is it right or is it wrong? And we've lost that. How are we going to make good people going forward as a culture?
This is what worries me a little bit about
the
ongoing march toward legalization of marijuana and probably other drugs. It used to be, as parents, you could say, well, it's illegal.
Yeah, right.
Just don't do it.
Right.
But now, in a lot of places, you can't say that anymore. And when you live in a culture that defines right and wrong by legal and illegal, it's harder to say to teenagers, well, don't smoke pot just because it's a bad idea to do it. There was a legal case recently in Colorado where somebody was fired for smoking pot, I think medicinally, and then they were drug tested at their work like the following day or whatever, and they tested positive and they were fired, and they actually sued because they're saying, hey, it's not illegal, you can't fire me for this anymore if I do it recreationally. And I think the courts actually upheld that no, you can be fired for it because it could affect your job performance.
So how are we going to make good people?
Can I just ask you one thing?
Yeah, ask me one thing.
All right, you just lost me a little bit on this story because you said something in theory. And then, so explain.
Solzhenitsyn's, I mean, this is fairly academic if you just take it that way.
Okay.
But then it comes to life when you apply it to a story like people shouting obscenities in the microphones of young female reporters.
And so your question out there to our masses is, how do we make good people?
If you don't have a commonality for good and you deny the church a role in shaping culture, and everything is whether it's legal or not. I think Donald Trump is a good example. I haven't done anything illegal. I built a huge empire. I'm very, very rich.
That does not sound like
I try to do things legally, though.
It's terrible.
No, that's kind of spot on.
That's
spot on.
Here's my answer to your question.
Yeah, that's how I see him.
Do you want that?
With more hair.
My answer?
Yes, what's your answer? How do we make good people? I try to do it on The Apprentice. Adrian. Thank you.
You got to work on that one.
Yeah. I think we start by being good people.
How does that make good people?
Because we first have to start with us. You can only control what you can control. We can only control our own behavior.
Christian's man in the mirror speech. You've given us this one before.
It's true.
I know it is.
We have to start with ourselves, and then those people that we are in authority over and around, and our friends.
No, but I have to be able to tell other people how to live.
You can't.
Shape up and fly straight.
You can only live by example.
But Solomon wants me to sit on my porch and shake my angry finger at the children.
Speaking of sitting on the porch, years ago I read Colin Powell's autobiography, which was I
heard that was a great autobiography.
It's a really good autobiography. And he grew up in New York, and he talks about when he was a kid, if he'd get in trouble at school, on his walk home from school to his house, like every mom would be out on every porch to give him a spanking, because news would travel from the school that kid had done something wrong, and every mom took responsibility for every other kid in that neighborhood, and not that we should go around spanking one another's kids.
One of the things that the Satanic Temple fights against, one of their basic planks, is corporal punishment in schools.
For it?
Against
it. Well, there you go.
Yeah. But I mean, Satan does not spank. Satan is more of a timeout guy.
I think whatever. But his point was not about spanking. It was about the fact that there was a shared moral value in that neighborhood, that they were all interested in raising virtuous moral kids, and everyone took responsibility for that.
And they all agreed on what a virtuous moral
kid
looked like.
Exactly. So now
they probably went to the same parish, and they had the same priest. And
there was a sense of community and identity and shared values. Well, one of the downsides of being as pluralistic as we are is we no longer have those shared values. So you can't assume that your neighbors think that what's virtuous is the same thing that you do, so that you can't really police one another's children in that way, and you can't trust the schools to share that value, and it's a mess.
Wow.
I think you got to be the change you want to see in the world, And I think that you have to,
Catchy.
I believe it.
Could see it on a poster. With,
I could see that on a bumper sticker,
with
couldn't you?
A kitten. A kitten changing the world. All right, we're out of time. What am I singing about?
Good luck.
Bath mats.
And balls and babies.
Goodbye. See you next week. Hey, would you like to have a bath mat? It weighs a ton, so don't try to carry that. But it's got values if you're missing some, like don't hit your kids in school. But maybe you think the church has a better way of raising people to be virtuous every day. If we can get more influence amongst just ourselves, maybe it'll spread to everybody else. And we can take the 10 Commandments down off the shelf, though keep it off the State House in Oklahoma City, 'cause then you gotta put the bath mat up there with the kiddies smiling up to him.
Because all cats go to hell.
See you next week.
See you next week. Bye, everybody.